Today, New South Wales recorded 89 new cases as the Premier foreshadowed an announcement on the future of Sydney's lockdown. Businesses and workers thrown a financial lifeline to get them through.
With workers and businesses at breaking point and Sydney's lockdown threatening to stretch weeks, possibly months,
we'll have more to say about that tomorrow.
Something had to give.
The New South Wales outbreak has proved to be more severe, more dangerous, and it's in the national interest that we now put in place an upgraded set of arrangements.
Those arrangements include a new business support package jointly funded by the state and federal governments. Small and medium businesses who can demonstrate a 30% decline in turnover, eligible for up to 10 grand a week, contingent on bosses keeping their staff.
It's not in any New South Wales employer's interest to leave staff behind at the moment. They know that they will need those staff in a few weeks' time, hopefully. It's as soon as that.
Sole traders will be eligible for $1,000 a week. For individuals too, help is on the way. The federal government's disaster payment being boosted to $600 for workers who've lost more than 20 hours a week and $375 for those who've lost between 8 and 20 hours.
You don't have to have lost your job. You don't have to have left your employer. It doesn't matter who your employer is. If you have lost those hours, you can access that payment right now.
The New South Wales government pitching in to offer the disaster payments statewide.
We know this is not just focused on Sydney. There are many workers who are doing it tough outside those areas.
And with lockdown taking its toll on so many, there's also $17 million for a mental health package.
You will get through this. This support is being put there particularly to help you.
So with no end in sight for struggling Sydney-siders, will this be enough to keep them afloat?
And Social Services Minister Anne Ruston joins us now. And there is a slight difference in amounts here, but is this just JobKeeper by another name that's been announced today?
Well, certainly what we tried to do today with the announcement was to reflect the last quarter payments, that the amounts that were the JobKeeper payments in the last quarter of 2020, which reflects the prolonged nature of this lockdown that we're seeing in New South Wales at the moment.
And what about going forward? You've mentioned this will apply to other states in this situation. At what point in a lockdown will these payments be triggered? If a 3-day lockdown's issued, will they come in, or does it need to be 3 weeks into a long lockdown?
Well, a few weeks ago we announced that the federal government would support individuals through individual payments after 1 week of lockdown. What we've announced today that is as we move into the 4th week of lockdown, the federal government will put in place the supports that were announced today.
One of the criticisms the Berejiklian government has faced is that the lockdown wasn't hard enough, quick enough, so that there were retail shops open that really aren't essential, and we're now seeing them listed as exposure sites. And one of the responses the Premier made when asked about that was that she didn't want to close businesses where workers didn't have income support. And now that's come through as a result of this. Is it fair to say that had you done this 2 weeks ago, New South Wales would be in a much better position on the health front than it is now?
Well, one of the things that we made very clear right from the start of this pandemic is that we would stand side by side with all Australians as they work their way through what was, has been one of the most uncertain times in modern history. And we have been working with the state and territory governments across the country to make sure that we share the responsibility for supporting individuals and businesses in their states. What we did with Victoria was we made it very clear that at the end of 7 days that we will provide a level of support to households through the COVID disaster payment, which we did, and that was available to New South Wales after they had suffered a 7-day lockdown. What we've done today is we've indicated that when the lockdown goes beyond the 3 weeks that we're currently seeing, then there will be additional supports put in place. And the federal government has said that not only will we support individuals through household payments, but we also will join with the New South Wales government to support businesses with a cash flow boost, as was announced today.
The Labor opposition, and I should say not just the Labor opposition, have observed that in the case of Victoria, your government was very reluctant to provide payments. You were worried that you were incentivising lockdowns. There was a lot of talk about how many days Victoria had spent in lockdown compared to other states. And the point is now being noted by these people that once Sydney is in lockdown, it's a very different situation, much more prepared to come to the table with money, to expand the money that's on offer, and no real criticisms about the idea that there is a lockdown. Are you playing favourites here?
Look, not at all. The decisions in relation to the COVID disaster payment were made as a result of the situation that Victoria found itself in a few months ago. Unfortunately, in New South Wales, the lockdown has extended past the 2 weeks that Victoria were able to contain their lockdown with. So I think what we've seen today is just a reflection of the fact that New South Wales lockdown has extended past 3 weeks, and so that there are additional measures recognising the impact of a longer lockdown.
So where was the reluctance to offer help that we saw in Victoria, for example? Why was there a decision that the asset test, that you could only access the payments if you had less than $10,000 in assets in the second week? Why does that magically disappear in the third week as Sydney enters that lockdown? Like, you can kind of see that some of these things look either arbitrary, or the behaviour, the reluctance seems to be there in one case but not the other.
I think you'll find that the responses have been as a result of the response that has needed to be taken because of the particular situation that we found ourselves in. I mean, we've got 5 million people at the moment in New South Wales that are currently in lockdown, and it was the speed of which we were able to make to deliver these payments. And you saw that last year when we went into the initial COVID lockdown. We waived many requirements of people who wanted to access payments because we wanted to make sure that it was as quick as it possibly could be. And I think many of the actions that we've taken over this year have been a reflection of the level of demand and making sure that the speed of our response was as quick as it possibly could be, so people could get access to the help that they needed as quickly as possible.
Well, it is good news for New South Wales residents today with this funding. Hopefully they don't need it for too long, Anne. We really appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
With so much content online, it's sometimes hard to keep up with it all. And let's face it, who has the time? The Project YouTube has you covered with the stories that matter. Hit subscribe for a daily list of the news that you need to know.